Today on the Wire to Wire podcast, Gaethje versus Khabib finally gets a date, but that's not the only news out of the Champs Corner. Derek Lewis versus Kelly Olynyk in tonight's main event on ESPN. I give you my fight pick, and now I see this fight breaking down. Also, Ben Simmons hurt in the bubble. I give you that information and more on the Wire to Wire podcast.
Welcome back, guys. You're listening to the Wire to Wire podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Smethers. Today we got a lot to get into, so without further ado, let's hop right in. Right off the bat, we're going to start with the UFC. Big UFC news, October 24th, Justin Gaethje versus Khabib Nurmagomedov for the lightweight championship of the world. With this fight announcement, so excited. We all knew we were going to get it, especially after Gaethje's performance against Tony Ferguson. We all knew we were going to get it. I did not think that it was going to come this soon. I definitely thought with everything going on in Khabib's life at this moment, we were going to see this probably around February or March. But he wants to get right back into it. He wants to get right back into training camp. So October 24th. Now, with this fight announcement came another announcement. Khabib will not be traveling to the States to American Kickboxing Academy for training camp. Now, we all know, we've seen the videos with him messing around with Daniel Cormier and wrestling with all the high school wrestlers that Daniel Cormier brings in, all the funny videos that go along with that, all the shit talking, all that. So with this announcement, there's going to be some things that affect this fight, in my opinion, a lot. The fact that you don't get the same coaching. Now, I'm sure he's got a good camp in Dagestan. I'm sure of it. But you don't get the world-class trainers and the amount of world-class trainers that you get at AKA on a daily basis to help break down your fight, help you analyze your game, analyze your opponent's weaknesses, analyze your weaknesses, your strengths, and how to game plan a fight. You don't get that. Now, you also lose top-tier training partners. Now, I'm sure, again, he's got great training partners in Dagestan, but I'm pretty certain that they're not as good or not to the quality that you get and the amount of quality you get from a place like AKA. Those things are going to hurt in his preparation for the fight. Now, I'm sure with Zoom meeting and all this stuff, I'm sure there's some communication. They're not, he's not just dumping AKA, and AKA is not just going to dump a champion like Khabib, but it's a lot different than having those minds in one room and those eyes in one room every day you get ready for a fight. And the schedule that it takes to get ready for a fight, I'm sure, is going to be affected here. The other aspect of this, obviously, we all know, is the fact that Khabib's father passed away from complications due to COVID-19. Now, there's a piece of this that I'm sure a lot of people know, but maybe some of you don't. Khabib's father was also his head trainer for his whole career. He was always the number one guy in Khabib's corner his whole career. He's always been there. He's not going to be there anymore. He's always been there in camp to, I'm sure, keep Khabib in the right mindset. He's not going to be there anymore. So Khabib will be challenged on every single front you can be challenged from in a camp coming up for this fight. He's going to be challenged emotionally, dealing with the passing of his father. He's going to be challenged mentally. He's going to have to take on a lot, he's going to have to game plan his own fight. I'm sure he's going to have some help, but it's going to be mainly him game planning his own fight, game planning his own camp, not to mention planning his own weight cut. Everything is his problem now. So that's going to hurt. And he's going to be challenged physically. I mean, Gaethje's an absolute savage. He's probably the hardest puncher that Khabib's ever seen. He's definitely he's a way different fighter than Khabib's ever seen. And he's on a roll, and he's in the prime of his career, and he's coming off the biggest win in his career against Tony Ferguson. So Khabib's going to have to deal with that basically by himself. this is going to be a massive challenge for Khabib. If Khabib wins this fight, it's going to be a huge statement into his conversation for GOAT. He's already the greatest lightweight fighter we've ever seen. I don't think anyone can argue that. I'm a huge BJ Penn fan. Doesn't hold a candle to Khabib. So, with everything that Khabib's going to have to deal with, this is an absolute nightmare. We haven't even addressed the stylistic matchup, that the problems that creates. Yes, Gaethje throws hard. Gaethje's a great striker, great leg kicks, great hands, fantastic at pretty much every part of the game. But a lot of people in the stand-up, what a lot of people don't know and don't think about is the fact that Gaethje's a fantastic wrestler. You don't see it because he doesn't initiate takedowns, but the fact is he treats his wrestling game a lot like a Chuck Liddell, where he just uses his wrestling to deter a wrestler from trying to shoot on him, but also stop the takedown, get up, and then throw shots on the exit. Now, I'm not saying Khabib can't take down Gaethje. Gaethje will hit his back. That's going to happen. Unless Khabib gets caught early and gets dropped, the fight will end up with Gaethje at some point on his back. This is going to be a really hard fight for Gaethje as well. Khabib is a nightmare for anybody. But for Khabib, Gaethje stylistically does not match up well. Khabib is a above average striker. He's not a good striker. We've seen it. He's lost one round in his career, and that was to Conor McGregor, I'm pretty sure in the second round, if my memory serves me well. But you saw in that second round, that was the one round where Conor was able to stop the takedowns and find his range and land pretty comfortably. With Gaethje, he's a better wrestler than Conor. So I think he will stop the takedowns. It's going to be draining on Gaethje like Khabib drains everybody. But with this camp, where's Khabib's cardio going to be? Where's Khabib's mindset going to be? All this stuff, it all goes into how this fight's going to play out. I will give you my pick as the fight gets closer. I'm still kind of bouncing back and forth. But this is going to be a lot closer than people think. And this camp move is just going to add to that fact. But it's going to be a great fight, and I can't wait to see it. So let's move on. There are fights tonight. UFC has been the absolute MVP of this quarantine when it comes to sports and how they've set it up, how they've treated every card. They've been putting out card after card after card. So many fights, so much stuff to watch throughout this quarantine, keeping us all in our right minds if you're a fight fan. So it's been great to watch. Now, there's been some absolute bangers of cards, but there's also been some, a card like tonight where there's one or two cards, but there's always been a fight on every single card that has implications and gives that card a big fight feel. Tonight's card's no different. I'm gonna break down two fights in this card. I'm gonna break down the co-main, Chris Weidman versus Agamedov, and the main event, Derek Lewis versus Kelly Olynyk. So, let's start off with the co-main event. Okay, you got Chris Weidman and Agamedov. Now, first thing you got to think about is Chris Weidman's coming back down to 185. His 205 journey was short-lived, or return to 205 was short-lived and not good at all. So returning to 185, that's a big story here. The other thing is the former middleweight champions taking on a guy like Agamedov, who's kind of been a gatekeeper for quite a few years now. Not a top tier fighter. Not a guy that's gonna make a push for the title anytime soon. But a guy that's a dog and goes out and fights his fight and is on somewhat of a roll right now. Agamedov's coming off of winning 4 of his last 5. One of those the only non-win is a draw. So he's kind of on a roll. He's feeling good, and he's a fighter at the end of the day, and he's a UFC quality fighter. So this is going to be a matchup for Chris Weidman, and you're going to see where Chris Weidman is at mentally, physically, and where he's at in his career at this point. Chris Weidman, coming off of losing 4 of his last 5. His last fight at 185, he lost to Jacare Souza by knockout. And then his 205 debut or re-debut at 205, he lost to Dominic Reyes by knockout. He's lost 4 of his last 5 by knockout. His only win coming by submission against Kevin Gastelum, who we've also seen is not, in my opinion, a top contender at 185. He's always going to be on the verge of the top, inside the top 10 for a while. Probably the 6th or 7th guy in the rankings. So we've seen that now. Gastelum is not that top tier fighter that a lot of people thought. I never did, but a lot of people thought he was a top tier fighter. I think the last few fights have proven that he's not. But Wyman's coming off 4 knockout losses in his last 5 fights. As any fight analyst would tell you, there's only so many punches your face can take before your chin breaks. Chris Weidman, he's always, for most of his career, he's had a pretty good chin. He's a former middleweight champion, but the loss to Jacare, the loss to Dominic Reyes, his chins look terrible. That last knockout against Dominic Reyes was rough. So this fight's going to tell you a lot about where Chris Weidman is at, more than like where Agamedov is at. Agamedov, I don't think is going to make any push for a title anytime soon, but he has won 4 of his last 5. He is a good fighter, so this is a big, where's Chris Weidman at after this fight? So that's yet to be seen, but that's going to be an exciting one to watch tonight. In the main event, you get the Black Beast, Derek Lewis, going up against Kelly Olynyk. Now, last time we saw Kelly Olynyk was a fight against Fabricio Werdum, and pretty recently we saw an out-of-shape Werdum go up against Olynyk, and Olynyk was able to walk through shots, make it gross, make it dirty, kind of just scrappy. That's how he likes all his fights, and then he'll take you down to the ground and try to finish you with a sub. Doesn't hit the hardest, has 0 head movement, takes a lot of shots to the face in every fight, takes a lot of punishment. Guy looks like he's about 45,000 years old, and he's going up against Derek Lewis. Now here is where this fight's going to be decided. Like I said, in the last fight against Werdum, Olynyk was just taking shots and walking through them. What's the one thing you can't do against Derek Lewis? Walk through a right hand. And Derek Lewis is always ready to throw that right hand. And if you don't have good head movement and you don't have good strike defense, that right hand's going to end the night for you. So we've seen it with Volkov. Volkov won every minute of every round against Derek Lewis. But with about 15 seconds left in the last round, Derek Lewis hit him with a right hand and Volkov never got up. So Derek Lewis is going to win this fight by second round knockout. But don't blink. This fight's going to be exciting just because Derek Lewis, especially since he returned from that knee injury and he took some weight off and leaned down and changed his diet and took some pressure off his back that's given him so many problems in his fight career. You've seen a more athletic Derek Lewis, a better Derek Lewis, a little bit more in the gas tank. Not a lot, but a little bit more in the gas tank, able to kind of push a little bit more than he still takes about a minute and a half off every round, but that blitz is undeniably devastating. And with a guy like Olynyk, who doesn't move his head a lot and doesn't have the best striking defense, you can't take those shots from Derek Lewis. So Derek Lewis is going to win this fight by second round knockout, and it's going to be an exciting one. That's my pick. So in the co-main, my pick here, I'm going to have to take Weidman just because I've never seen Agamedov as like a real threat to anybody. Even his last 4 wins of just no real big names. The biggest name being Tim Boesch. So Weidman should win this fight, but where's his chin at? Where's his health at? Is he mentally, in that champion's mindset, or is he just fighting for a paycheck at this point? But I'm going to take Weidman, former middleweight champion, probably by decision. I think he's going to revert back to his wrestling at 185 and stand and bang a lot less because his chin's just not there. He's not able to do it. All right, guys. So let's move on to some news out of the NBA. Now, let's start off by saying, again, the presentation that the NBA has given us with the bubble and all that stuff, I get it, no fans and all that, but with the different camera angles and all this different stuff they're doing, it really doesn't take away from basketball. It's been fun to watch. Games have been competitive. Has it been the highest level of basketball? No. Long layoff. I don't think anyone expected to see these guys at tip-top form. But there's been a lot of storylines coming out of the bubble. But the biggest one in the last couple days has to be the fact that Ben Simmons is probably going to miss the rest of the year due to that knee injury he suffered 2 days ago. Trust the process. You got to keep trusting, I guess. Because with this, when you lose Ben Simmons, I get it. He's not a great shooter. He has made improvements. I think he has like 2 or 3 threes in the bubble. I think it's at this point just the fact that mentally he just doesn't want to pull the trigger. But with Ben Simmons, what you get is a guy that can guard 1 through 4, a guy that is a great distributor of the basketball, and a guy that is very hard to stop going to the basket, and can pretty much get a basket whenever you need it, when he's on. So Ben Simmons being out, this hurts the 76ers. I think it goes without saying, this hurts the 76ers a lot going into that playoff push. The thing that you're going to learn with this injury, and I guess is somewhat of a light at the end of the tunnel, is you're going to see if Joel Embiid can carry a team and just how far he can carry a team, pretty much by himself. Joel is obviously a great scorer, a good defender, a good playmaker at the 5, but he can't do everything Ben Simmons can. And even though they don't mesh the best together, they're definitely a better team when both of them are on the court. So I think the biggest thing to take out of this is got to be, what can Joel Embiid do? How much can he carry a team in an East that is pretty weak? Outside of the Bucks, there's the Sixers should, if Ben Simmons was healthy, I thought the Sixers should have pushed and probably been in the Eastern Conference Finals. As the season gets closer and when the playoffs are finally announced, I will give you my full breakdown of the brackets and all that stuff, and I will give you my eventual champion, in my opinion. But Ben Simmons being out hurts a lot. And just if you're a Sixers fan, for a fan that's had to watch your team lose for 4, previous, you watch your team lose for 4 or 5 years straight to get all these draft picks and get Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons, and both of them haven't been able to stay healthy on a consistent basis. Is the process worth it, or was it worth it? I think it's over, to be honest with you. Was it worth it? I don't think it was. I think that's another big takeaway from this whole thing. You got 2 guys that just can't stay healthy consistently, in Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. Another thing out of the bubble, Lakers can't shoot worth shit. I don't think that comes as a shock to anybody, especially with the long layoff. You lose an Avery Bradley, but the Lakers have clinched the number 1 seed, so they will get whoever makes it in at the 8th seed. They will get them, and I think what the Lakers are doing right now are resting LeBron to make sure he's 100% for that for the playoffs. Resting him because of a groin soreness. They said they're resting Danny Green tonight. So Lakers can't shoot. That's another thing that's come out of this. But I think the biggest thing that we've seen is the Trailblazers cementing themselves right now as the 9th seed all by themselves, no ties or nothing. They've played very good basketball. I think they're actually going to overtake the 8th seed from the Grizzlies, who have played so horribly in the bubble. So the Blazers are hot and ready to go. I know they lost today, but I think they're going to make that push towards that 8th seed, take the 8th seed, and end up beating the Grizzlies in the play-in. Best of the play-in series. I'm thinking they're only going to have to win 1 game. I think they overtake the Grizzlies for the 8th seed. So the Blazers are hot and they're looking good. They shoot really well. Damian Lillard's on fire. Carmelo's played well in the bubbles. DJ McCollum's a good Robin to Lillard's Batman. And this is the thing you have to think about the Blazers is we didn't think they were going to make the playoffs before the shutdown due to all the injuries they had. Now they're healthy, and they're playing really well. A lot of people thought before the season the Blazers were going to be a 4 or 5 seed. Now they're an 8 seed. It's going to be a matchup for the Lakers. I can definitely see them giving the Lakers problems due to the fact that they shoot so incredibly well. So that could be that anytime your team shoots well, you're always in a game. So especially with Lillard and CJ McCollum from 3, they're always going to be in that game in the games. But the Lakers, I think, will still get a gentleman's sweep out of that. But the Blazers looking good, Carmelo looking good in the bubble. That's always a good story. I do want to see the Blazers make the playoffs. The Pelicans have been with Zion's minutes restrictions, and they just haven't meshed well since the start. We thought with the warm-up games that they were going to play really well. They just haven't played well in the bubble. Haven't been able to put a full four quarters together and play good defense at all. So they're not going to make it. Blazers are going to make that 8 seed. Big news out of the NBA. NBA has been great to watch, fun to watch. I'm glad it's back. All right. So little NHL news. I just wanted to say I'm getting back into it. I'm getting back into researching and studying and watching all the games and everything. But playoff hockey has to be the most exciting sport exciting playoffs in sports. And the way they set this up with the kind of March Madness feeling setup of qualifying rounds to get into the playoffs. You've already seen a couple upsets, most notably the Oilers got upset by the Blackhawks, and the Penguins will be watching the playoffs from home as well. So no Connor McDavid in the playoffs, and no Sidney Crosby in the playoffs this year. So it's just been, yes, there's been some rust, just like in basketball. Yes, they're not in midseason form, just like basketball. But the difference is in hockey, especially when they're playing like they're trying to get in the playoffs or playing like it's the playoffs, the intensity is just so amazing and so fun to watch. These guys are going out and giving it their all, and the games have been amazing to watch. So good on the NHL. Their bubble's working as well. Good return for them. Good week. Good opening week for the NHL. All right. So let's get into some MLB news. And we're going to finish it off with some MLB news. So biggest thing over the last week is the Miami Marlins are back. Everyone calling for the end of their season, calling for the end of the MLB season due to the COVID outbreak they had, because a few of their players wanted to do stupid shit and not do their job. So their season was put on hold. But they've come back, they come out, and they keep winning. They're 7-1 now, and playing some pretty good ball. They're pitching very, very well. I'm pretty sure they've got the lowest ERA as a staff this year. Their pitching is fantastic, and they just go to show that as long as you can put MLB quality players out there in the lineup, if you can pitch well and play good defense, you will be in every single game. And that's exactly what they've done, to the tune of a 7-1 opening record. And I think the biggest thing that comes out of the Miami Marlins return, because 7-1, still a lot of season left to play, so you wonder if that continues. But the biggest thing you've seen in their return is the fact that baseball can return from these outbreaks. They're not in a bubble, so they're going to have outbreaks. But how will they deal with it was the biggest thing. And what you saw was the fact that they dealt with it. They pushed their season back. They're playing double headers. They're in the middle of a six games in 5 days stretch, which is brutal, but they're able to come back and play. And that's taken a lot of concern off the league in regards to how will they be able to finish this season. I think the Marlins doing this just goes to show everybody that the MLB will be able to push to the end of the season, and we will get a champion this year. few new rule changes that I think will help to go along with this, or a big rule change I think will help go along with this, is the fact that it was announced as of August 1st, MLB will be switching double headers to 7 innings. This is a rule that if you ever played high school ball or college ball, this is how they treat their double headers, and I think this is a great thing. I think they should implement this in future seasons. This is, a way to keep a lot of players fresh. When you start to add the double headers up, that's a lot less innings that these players will have to play. It doesn't seem like a lot just, game to game, but as you add them up, it adds up to a lot of innings that these players will not have to play, and I think it's a good thing and a good way to deal with COVID outbreaks, 100%. Another team that's dealing with this right now is the Phillies, are in the same stretch. So, 7 innings, doubleheaders, fantastic. Shorter game, shorter games and stuff, more exciting. I think this is the way to treat doubleheaders, and I think they should bring doubleheaders back to give these players more off days, especially before a weekend series. A doubleheader on a Saturday would be great, and give these guys an extra travel day to get ready for this series and stuff like that. So I think doubleheaders should stay in baseball, and I think they're going to help a lot during this year with the COVID outbreaks that are bound to happen with a few more teams. Obviously, the Cardinals are dealing with it right now because they all wanted to be idiots and go out to a fucking casino because they're not professionals. I mean, that's the only way you can put it. So, I think baseball has responded to all the negative press they were getting with how they were going to finish the season with the Marlins and all that stuff with the Marlins. And, I mean, the Marlins are playing great baseball, and they're back, and they're only a few games behind everybody else now at 7-1. I don't think they're, let's not get crazy. I don't think they're going to push the playoffs. But that's the other thing. 60 games. Some teams have had some bad starts. Some good teams have had some bad starts. The Astros right now are below 500. The Angels, who everyone thought were going to be good, again, can't pitch, so they suck. I kind of figured that, but for some reason, a lot of these analysts were like, "Oh, Rendon, Angels are gonna be good. They still can't pitch, and so you can't score 7 runs a game." Every game, and you can't expect to let up 5 or 6 7 runs a game and expect to win. Look at the Giants, they're terrible. 3 games below 500. So baseball's come back and done a fantastic job with this whole Marlins fiasco, and baseball's just been fun to watch. The Yankees are hitting absolute tanks every game. I mean, Judge went on a 5-game run at hitting at least one in every game. Giancarlo started off hot. They've got they're definitely a front runner for the World Series this year. That team is so good, but again, will they be able to pitch? And will they be able to stay hot with the long ball? But baseball's been back. With no fans, I haven't seen much of a difference, but that's just because I'm a huge baseball fan and I don't pay attention to the fans anyway. Sure, there's been some moments already this year that you wish fans were there. Shane Bieber had a fantastic outing, or fantastic couple of outings. Anytime there's a walk-off home run, you expect to see fans and hear the roar, but miss out on that, so that kind of sucks. But at the end of the day, watching baseball on TV, you don't really notice the lack of fans. I mean, I would love to go to a baseball game, but I hate paying for a $15 beer. So, baseball's been great. Basketball's been great. NHL's been great. Sports in general have been great to have back and be competitive. And that's the big thing you're seeing is a lot of every league has been competitive with however they decided to come back. NBA, NHL basically coming back just before playoffs. Games have been competitive and fun to watch. MLB coming out, and some teams that you didn't expect to be playing 500 baseball are playing 500 baseball. Some teams that you expected to have a good year started off real slow in a 60-game season, which you can't have. So sports have been fun to come back. Little slow on the news cycle this week, but I gave you guys I gave you my thoughts on some things, and I want to say thank you again for taking your time out to listen to me this week. I will be back early next week with a new podcast and hopefully some more news over the weekend and early next week, and we can have another great podcast. Thank you guys for listening. Have a great weekend.